So how on earth can a military strike in South America threaten the trade deal that affects your job, maybe even the price of your groceries? Well, today, we're going to connect those dots. This is really a story about how fast our world is changing and why it really, really matters to you.
And it all kicks off with this really stark warning, a recipe for greater instability and more war. Journalist David Bush is talking about a huge shift in global politics where the rules that have kind of kept the peace for decades, well, they're starting to crumble. For a long, long time, the world has operated, at least in theory, on a system of international laws and agreements. But that system is being challenged, big time. We're seeing this massive shift to a more confrontational world, where the most powerful nations are kind of rewriting the rules to suit themselves.
And this pivot, it's crystal clear. I mean, just think back to 2003, right? The US spent months trying to build an international coalition for the Iraq invasion. Now compare that to today's strategy of direct, unilateral force, with very little concern for what the rest of the world thinks. It's a total go-it-alone approach.
Okay, so what does this new reality actually look like in the real world? Let's zoom in on the recent U.S. military operation in Venezuela. It's a perfect case study.
And man, it was fast. A really dramatic series of events that all unfolded in just a few days. You've got an illegal blockade, the capture of a head of state, and then a declaration of temporary U.S. control. I mean, these are moves that sent absolute shockwaves across the entire international community.
So you have to ask, what was the real goal here? The official story from the White House was that this was all just a mission to stop drug trafficking. But then you look at what the experts are saying. And, well, a lot of foreign policy experts believe the true objective was way bigger, forcing a complete regime change in Venezuela.
Now, the international response was all over the place, really divided. But Canada's position, that was something else. It was full of these internal contradictions. And it really highlights just how complicated and tricky this new world order is for America's allies.
So almost immediately, like within hours of the news breaking, Canada's Minister of Foreign Affairs puts out this statement. It's all about, our long-standing commitment to the rule of law and calling on everybody to respect international law. A super traditional, very by-the-book diplomatic response. But then, later that same day, the Prime Minister's office issues a statement that seemed a lot like blanket support for the U.S. action. This created this really jarring contrast, and honestly, it left a lot of people scratching their heads, wondering, wait, what is Canada's actual policy here?
Okay, so this geopolitical earthquake, it wasn't just felt in the halls of power. Nope, it sent immediate shockwaves right through the global economy. And we're talking about things that can hit your wallet directly, from the value of gold to maybe even the price of gas.
It's pretty simple. When the world feels unstable, investors get nervous. And what do? They often run to so-called safe haven assets. And gold is the classic example, right? We saw a flood of money pouring into gold, pushing its price up to a 29-day high.
At the exact same time, you had other companies making a totally different bet. Companies that were poised to benefit from a suddenly reopened Venezuelan oil industry, well, their stocks soared. Halliburton, a huge oil field services company, saw its stock jump nearly 8% just on the prospect of new business.
And this is exactly why the markets reacted so strongly. Just look at that difference. Venezuela is literally sitting on the world's largest proven oil reserves. We're talking over 300 billion barrels. But because of sanctions and mismanagement, their actual production is just a tiny fraction of that. The potential to unlock all that oil, that is a massive, massive deal for the global energy market.
All right, so let's bring all this back home. How does this connect to us? Well, this whole new aggressive foreign policy creates this incredibly turbulent, unpredictable backdrop for a really crucial economic deadline that's coming up, the 2026 review of the trade deal that governs the entire North American economy. And that deal is SUSMA, the agreement that replaced NAFTA. It is the absolute bedrock of our continental economy, governing trade between Canada, the US, and Mexico. But here's the kicker. There's a mandatory review built right into the deal for 2026. And in this new political climate we've been talking about, its survival is not a sure thing at all.
And here's the really crucial point. Even before everything went down in Venezuela, this trade deal was already on kind of shaky ground. There are all these long-running fights over stuff like American milk getting into Canada or tariffs on Canadian lumber. And these aren't small things. These are major issues that put thousands and thousands of jobs on the line.
So, how is Canada supposed to navigate all this? In this kind of high-stakes game, business groups are basically urging for a really strategic, really cautious approach. Their advice kind of boils down to this. Stick to diplomacy, whatever you do. Don't get into a big tariff war that's just going to hurt your own people. And hey, never forget that you're the smaller partner here. You just can't afford to overplay your hand.
And this whole situation, it really brings us to a massive question. I think the key thing to take away from all of this is that the line between military power and economic negotiation, it's getting really, really blurry. What happened in Venezuela isn't just some far-off foreign policy issue. It's a signal of a fundamental shift, one that could unravel the entire global trade system we all depend on. And it leaves us wondering, is the era of predictable, rules-based agreements just over?